You know what I like to do in an FPS game with some of the most interesting guns in gaming history? Remove them! Medieval mode is a game mode where your characters are stripped of your guns and you're left with your melee weapons, with a few exceptions. I mean, it does make sense for a game like TF2 to have this. The melee weapons have interesting stats rather than other games where it just helps you move faster. I know TF2 doesn't have the most in-depth medieval gameplay. If you want better gameplay in that regard, there are other games that exist, but I still feel like the game has a fun enough mode to play around for a bit. And with 9 interesting classes to go over, I think it'd be interesting to rank the weapons. All the weapons will be ranked together, but I'll be going in order of class from Scout to Spy. So with that out of the way. Scout is one of the better classes in the game. He has the highest speed in the game, letting him get in and out of situations at his control. And not only that, he has great primary and secondary options too. Stripped down to his melee and most of his secondaries, he's still a good class to pick. He has several good melee weapons to choose from, and a few good secondaries to help him in his ventures. The Flying Guillotine is a great weapon in this mode. Having a ranged option for any class is great, since it's one of the hardest things to come by. If you hit the target, you not only get the 50 base damage, but the bleed effect also adds up the damage to 90. It pairs great with pretty much any melee weapon, and it is insanely useful. S tier. The Mad Milk is also a good weapon. While not reaching the heights of the Flying Guillotine, there is still a strong case for it. When you hit the enemy with it, they get doused in milk, and anyone attacking them will get some health back. It's great for getting some extra health in the game for not only you, but your teammates. A tier. The Criticola is not really a great weapon. If you pair it up with something like the Boston Basher or Rap Assassin, then you get some good extra damage, but having extra damage on your melee doesn't matter too much, since now you take extra damage yourself. And not only that, since everyone in the game mode uses weapons that give them a damage boost, you're going to be dying a lot with this item. D tier. The Bog Atomic Punch is easily Scout's worst item. The only real use the weapon has is to get around enemy lines or sentry guns. In normal TF2, it's not horrible, but when you remove a lot of the reasons this item is only okay, you get an item that is pointless in all regards. You're invulnerable to all incoming damage for a period of time, but once that's over, you now move at a slower pace, which is rough in a game mode all about melee combat. F tier. The melee weapons for Scout have a different attack speed and damage output than the rest of the cast, attacking for 35 damage normally and 105 damage for critical hits. Having an attack speed difference for the class is fine, since 65 damage would be too much for the fastest class in the game. The stock weapon is a good choice since there are no downsides, and the random crits do come by quite often. B tier. Just like in normal TF2, the Sandman isn't good. Since you die in 2 65 damage swings either way, the health penalty isn't as bad as normal TF2. However, the baseball is still just as useless as it is in the base game. D tier. The Candy Cane is the first of many direct upgrades in this mode. Well, sort of, the Ulpul Caber exists, but the explosive damage penalty rarely comes into play. The extra health pack on kill is great. Being able to recover practically all of your health after every fight is extremely useful in this game mode. A tier. The Boston Basher is an insanely fun weapon. Only problem is that it's very hard to use. Whenever you hit an enemy, you cause them to bleed, but if you miss, you bleed yourself. It's better to swing not as often, since it's hard to hit people at Scout due to his running speed. Still, being able to get kills with the bleed effect is satisfying. If you're able to get good with the weapon, you can easily outperform stock. A tier. The Sun on a Stick is our first direct downgrade in our tier list. Sort of. The Huntsman arrows with fire tips exist, but it's whatever. You have a weapon that only has a damage upgrade against burning targets and have a fire resistance. However, you rarely, if ever, see a burning enemy, and with the damage penalty this weapon has, it's bad. F tier. The Fan of War never gets any use in this mode, due to its horrid damage. Sure, you can mark an enemy for death and get crits when you normally get mini crits, but you know what's better than marking someone for death? Killing someone. F tier. The Atomizer is a pretty fun weapon with a unique mechanic, giving the Scout the ability of a third jump when it's out. In medieval mode, not only do you get the upside of a third jump, but you also practically remove the downside of a slower switch speed. The mini crit while airborne stat might sound good on paper, but the 15% damage penalty doesn't really let that stat flourish as much. A fine weapon. B tier. The Rap Assassin does have a horrible damage penalty, but it does make up for it in some regard for having the Bauble, which does 65 damage in total, and if you pair it up with the Flying Guillotine, you get the stacking bleed damage. But sadly, on its own, it's not too good, but still fine. C tier. Soldier has some of the best mobility in the game, which is funny because his normal walking speed is terrible. Learning how to rocket jump properly is essential to any good soldier. Only problem is that you don't have the rocket launcher, which means you're left with your melee weapons and your banners. Now in normal TF2, Soldier does have some great melee weapons, but they're mostly supportive weapons. They're not the best weapons in the mode, which means that even at a beefy 200 health, he doesn't get much use. One of the 3 banners available for the Soldier, the buff banner doesn't have much use. Yeah, after 600 damage you're able to get some mini crits for you and your team, which is genuinely great. But the only problem is that the other 2 banners give you a separate upside along to their intended purpose. Not only that, getting 600 damage in this game mode can be a challenge, unless you cheese it by using the half Zatoichi against a person using the same weapon. But if you don't have many options to get the damage other than a bunch of random crits. D tier. The Battalion's backup is a better banner. While still not being insanely good due to the soldier's walking speed and damage output, it's still a fine weapon. Getting 600 damage allows you to gain immunity to crits and a 35% damage resistance total. Secondly, you gain 20 extra health, which is great. Only real problem is that getting to 600 damage is tough. C tier. The last of the banners, and this one is the easiest one to use. The Conqueror takes 480 damage to charge, and when you charge it you have the ability to gain health back on hit, a speed boost, and the same thing happens to your teammates. On top of that, you get to recover your health over time. It comes in use more often than the other 2 banners, and is easier to pull off. B tier. The base jumper allows you to float in midair, which only really helps rocket jumpers practicing with the Market Gardener. And since you can't rocket jump in this mode, it's useless. F tier. So the gunboats are a wearable item that allow you to take less damage when you're rocket jumping, in a game mode where you can't use a rocket launcher. F tier. The man treads are another wearable item for Soldier, and the only real use they have is when you land on someone's head, you make them take triple the amount of fall damage that you would have taken. Only problem is, I'd much rather have one of the banners on. F tier. Stock is an okay weapon. Having basic damage is fine, and being able to crit people is good as well, but his speed really drags him down. C tier. So the Market Gardener has guaranteed random crits, but only if you rocket jump, which means you can't use the item's upside in this game mode, and you have a slower firing speed. F tier. The Equalizer seems like it would be great on paper, and while it does have its moments, the drawbacks are too big to ignore. The more damage you take, the more damage you do, which is good, but you start off with reduced damage. Once you get to 114 health, you get to stock weapon damage, which means it'll only take 2 swings to take you out if we're talking normal melee damage. While you can do massive amounts of damage when you're lucky, those moments are few and far between. D tier. The Pain Train is the first multi-class item, and in this game mode, it's a direct upgrade from stock. When you're on the attacking team, you get an extra capture rate, but when you're defending, it's the same as stock. So objectively it's better, but not by enough to get it out of the same tier. C tier. The half Zatoichi is one of the best items in the game, on DEMOMAN. On Soldier it's really good, but it doesn't reach the heights it can usually reach. You get a longer melee range, and when you kill someone, you get half of your base health back. Not only that, it has the ability to go over your base health. Not only that, but it can one-shot other half Zatoichi users, which is insanely fun to play around with. A tier. The disciplinary action has the longest reach in the game. It has such a long reach, in fact, it can hit people behind you. The Demo Knight swords don't even do that. Along with this, you get the ability to hit a teammate and make them move faster for 3 seconds, which is good for getting other people to the front lines. It does have a 20% damage penalty, but it's not too bad since its upsides are so nice. B tier. The escape plan is many soldiers' pick for melee, but in medieval mode it's not that good. It's a getaway tool that really is more of a backup plan than anything, hence the name. The increased running speed is great, but the fact you're marked for death the entire time you're using it means you can't really get the most out of it like you would for normal gameplay. D tier. PYRO is a jack of all trades in normal gameplay. You can mold the class to your liking with his various tools, but removing his primary and secondary, you still get a pretty good class in medieval mode. While only having a few great weapons, they definitely are amazing when paired up against the rest of the weapons in this mode, and at a good health pool, you see a good amount of pyros in this mode. The stock fire axe is an okay weapon. It doesn't have any upsides or downsides, but it's outclassed by a few other weapons. C tier. Now I love the extinguisher and what it lets you achieve in normal gameplay. However, with the lack of potential to burn people, you don't get to use its upsides ever, and since you can't burn people, you're stuck with only downsides. F tier. So the Home Wrecker lets you remove sappers from sentries, which don't exist in medieval mode, and you have a damage penalty. F tier. The Power Jack is a great weapon. It has so many upsides. It has random crits, it has a speed boost, and it also gives you 25 health back on kill. There is a 20% damage vulnerability while you use it, and that does kind of suck, but a 65 damage swing still takes 3 hits in total to kill you, so it's not terrible. A tier. The Backscratcher is definitely Pyro's best weapon in this mode. Its downside doesn't affect the game mode, and its upsides are insane. A 25% increase in damage, the ability to random crit, and you get extra health from health packs. So you're just able to keep getting random crits over and over with how they work in this game. One of the best items. S tier. Since the Pyro has more than enough options to set the enemy on fire during normal gameplay, the sharpened volcano fragment is near useless. In medieval mode, this is the Pyro's only way of doing burn damage, so that must mean the weapon is now viable. And while it does have some stiff competition, it's still pretty good. With a 20% damage penalty, it's able to burn enemies for a total of 112 damage. That really ain't nothing to sneeze at. And while there are some much better options, the volcano fragment is still a good weapon. B tier. So the third degree is just stock with one upgrade, and that upgrade does not apply to this game mode. C tier. So with the Neon Annihilator, you can crit people who are wet. In this game mode, that's only Mad Milk. Sadly, not a lot of people use that item, mainly because people would rather fend for themselves than help their teammates out. Not only that, there's a 20% damage penalty, so you can't even one-shot a lot of the classes, and you don't get random crits either. F tier. The Hot Hand is a horrible item in the main game, mainly because you have so many good options to compare it to. In medieval mode, yeah, it's still just as terrible. You get a speed boost on hit that lasts 1 second. Compare that to the Power Jack, which gives you a permanent speed boost. Adding to this, the swings on this weapon are unique. It swings twice instead of once, so the damage penalty on this item gets doubled if you only hit the target once, which happens insanely often with this weapon. This would have been the worst weapon added in the Jungle Inferno update if not for the Gas Passer. F tier. DEMOMAN is the best class in the game. He has great offensive potential and defensive options with his grenade and sticky bomb launchers. Likewise, Demo Knight is the best class in this game mode. He has great offensive potential and defensive options with his shield and weapons. Several of his weapons are great. His shields provide amazing utility, and he gets a free health buff for his primary. There is no doubt that Demo overall in the game is the best, and the same goes for this mode too. These are two items that are only upsides in this game mode. Listing off what they don't do is much easier than listing what they actually do. For starters, you get a 25 health increase, so people using the Eyelander don't even get any downsides with their health. Melee kills refill 25% of your meter. You get increased charging speed, you get faster movement with any of the shields, and also, the weapon does all of this passively. Even if you weren't using the shields, this weapon is a damn near must-have in this game mode for this class, going right up at the top of the charts, S tier. The Charge and Targe is a great item, but only for the on-demand crits and damage on impact. The fire and explosive resistances don't add much to Demo's kit. Still, having the ability to go across the map insanely fast and get a crit on demand is great. A tier. Now if there's any shield to gravitate towards, it's the Splendid Screen. You get bonus damage with the impact, but if you pair it with the Eyelander, you're able to get extra damage with each head. That is true for the other shields, but with this shield, you're able to hit people for 130 damage. You can one-shot light classes from shield damage alone. That is insane. Not only that, but you get a faster recharge rate with the weapon as well. So not only are you able to kill classes with shield bash alone, but you're able to charge more often in general. The shields already work great in this game mode, but this shield has the best upsides out of any of the shields. S tier. The Tie Turner is the weakest of the shield options. Sure, you have the best mobility with how easy you can move with the shield, but the issue is that it doesn't guarantee you a random crit at the end of the charge. Not being able to one-shot most classes in the game at will when you have other options that allow you is a bit of a deal breaker for me. Yeah, you get charged the most with the shield, but doesn't matter if I can't guarantee a kill. B tier. The base jumper has even less use on the DEMOMAN, and it has no use in medieval mode. F tier. Stock Battle is a decent choice due to the fact that the shields exist, but even without it, it's still a good weapon. C tier. The Eyelander is the first weapon that pops into people's head when it comes to the Demo Knight. The Eyelander takes away some of your overall health, but with every kill up to 4, you get 15 more health. So with the boots equipped, which they should be, it's literally free health, you can get up to 235 health. We're not done. You get a speed boost with each kill too. So not only are you running around with more health than a soldier, but you're running faster than a scout as well with the maximum amount of kills, which is absurdly strong. An insanely good weapon with tons of possibilities. S tier. Yeah, the Pain Train is an objective upgrade to stock half the time, not much different from Soldier, but it does gain some edge with the shields and walking speed of the demo. B tier. I cannot tell you the amount of times this item has killed me while making the recording of this video. It's not that this weapon is good, it's not even that it's great. This weapon feels like it plays on a different rule set from the other weapons. You get the longer reach like the other Demo Knight items, but the difference is that you get to have random crits as well. Secondly, you get to have a damage upgrade, which means every crit you swing is 234 damage. Now that isn't the most damage a weapon can do, in fact the Back Scratcher does more, but there's a difference between these two weapons and that's the class. With DEMOMAN, you get to have a shield that charges you across the map and get a crit if you hit the enemy with a shield near the end of the charge. So you get a guaranteed 234 damage, but you can also get the crits randomly. With the way that random crits work in this game, you can just spam random crits at any enemy that walks in your path. I mean, sure, there's a movement speed penalty, but who gives a shit when your weapon has a longer reach and 234 damage to give out at any time? S tier. The Claymore is a fine weapon. I mean, when you compare it to most of the Demo Knight weapons, it doesn't have much utility. I mean, sure, you can charge for longer, but there isn't that much use for it on this map since it's so tiny. Not terrible, but definitely a weak showing. C tier. Okay, so the Ullapool Caper explodes on impact, and after, it becomes the worst melee weapon for demo. So that must mean for the first hit it's great. Well, not exactly. So the TF2 wiki tells me that this weapon does 130 damage on hit, which is complete horseshit. There have been times when I hit a low health class and they don't die on impact. Not only that, it doesn't do that much damage after the first hit, and it has a slower swing speed penalty. Yeah, you can kill a few people if you charge into a crowd of them, but that's it. After that, you have a bad melee weapon, and most of the time you won't be killing that many people with it either. D tier. The half Satoichi has the same stats as it does for Soldier, but the difference is the shields that you're able to use. Not only can you guarantee yourself a crit if you time it properly, but you're able to recover a lot of your health back. This item is insanely fun, especially when you're able to kill an enemy who's holding the same weapon. A tier. So the Persian Persuader is a fine weapon. When compared to the other weapons, it's not really all that great, but being able to charge a ton is a fun mechanic. Only problem is it doesn't have any upside going for it like the Eyelander, Scotsman Skullcunter, or the half Satoichi. B tier. Heavy has the largest health pool in the game, which helps him in defensive situations, but his lack of speed and mobility hurts him at higher levels. While he does fare a bit better in medieval mode due to his high health and support items, Heavy still gets the short end of the stick when it comes to several of his melee weapons. The Sandwich is a classic item within the game. Being able to take a break from the fight to recover all of your health is a great deal, especially in this mode since you can't use your shotgun. You can also use it for healing your teammates, which is amazing. S tier. Eating the Delocus bar gives you 50 extra health to play around with, which does sound nice on paper, but we should probably do some math. If we're talking about 65 damage swings from melee weapons, then that means it takes 5 swings to kill you, but if you're using the Delocus bar, it takes 6 swings to kill you. Which, to be honest, isn't too much. Now let's look at it from another viewpoint. You're going to be facing enemies that are either using a weapon that has a damage bonus, or you're going to be hit with some random crits, so really 50 extra health isn't too much. C tier. The Buffalo Steak Sandwich is a fun weapon, especially paired up with the Killing Gloves of Boxing, giving the ability to always dish out mini crits and move 30% faster. Sure, there's a hidden stat that makes you take 20% more damage, but it's still a fun weapon to use when you want to mess around. B tier. The second banana is very similar to the Sandwich. Its main purpose is healing the target instead of giving them a different buff. The item can restore 200 health as opposed to the Sandwich's full restore, and can even recharge at half the speed. It only gives other players 20% of their maximum health, but the item is still a great option for the Heavy. A tier. Stock Fists are a fine item. With the large health pool that Heavy has, he doesn't have to worry about being random critted and dying instantly, even by the strongest weapons in the game, so Stock is a fine option to use. B tier. The Killing Gloves of Boxing are my favorite heavy melee weapon, giving you the ability to gain crits for 5 seconds after 1 kill. Not only that, you can random crit with this item as well, which is strange because you can get guaranteed crits, but that's beside the point. You do have a slower swing speed, but that doesn't matter too much because after 1 kill, you're able to go on a killing frenzy, dishing out 195 damage swing after another. A tier. The Gloves of Running Urgently are a favorite in the main game mode, making the slowest class in the game move faster, at the cost of a dwindling health pool that goes back up when you put the item away. Except for talking about medieval mode. Sure, you can have the Sandwich out if you're going to want to retain health, but in the game mode where you need a lot of health to survive or something else to mitigate that, it's hard to convince anyone to run this weapon when it's more of an enemy than the actual enemy. F tier. The Warrior Spirit is the strongest melee weapon in the game, with a crit possibility of 254. It's one of the few weapons that can instantly kill a Demoman with 4 heads. Not only that, it can 2-shot medics as well, which is great. Sure, you get 210 health with a damage vulnerability, but that downside is easy to manage when a weapon gives you back 50 health along with the health pack the enemy dropped. An insanely fun weapon. A tier. The Fists of Steel have a 100% melee damage vulnerability. F tier. The Eviction Notice has the same downside as the Gloves of Running Urgently, with a weapon that is not nearly as good, even in the main game. Yeah, it can swing faster, but with a ridiculously low damage on the weapon, it's not worth it. F tier. So the Holiday Punch has a strange ability. Instead of being able to random crit people for triple damage, your random crit makes the enemy laugh. You're able to taunt kill right after, which is amusing the first few times. Except the only problem is, the weapon is only funny in the normal game mode. Mainly because it's a surprise to see anyone use it and pull off a taunt kill combo with it. D tier. Engineer is essential in casual TF2. So many pubs getting stopped by a good sentry nest. But that's the issue. There's no sentries in medieval mode. So what you get is a class that is objectively the worst. Mediocre weapons and the smallest health pool in the game. Top that all off with the average walking speed and you get a class that is near missing from this game mode. It does suck that the developers couldn't find a way to make the Engineer viable in the game mode, but it is what it is. Stock is an okay weapon, but Engineer doesn't have good movement speed or lots of health to really take advantage of random crits. Every other class has something going for it, but Engineer gets neutered in this game mode. D tier. The Gunslinger is the best weapon for Engineer in this game mode, and it's still just pretty good at best. You get 25 extra health, which pulls you out of the 2-swing kill area, and you get the ability to control your crits. Every third consecutive swing you hit gives you a crit. Only problem is that there have been a few times where I did all the right setup, but it didn't give me a crit. Still, it's his best weapon. B tier. The Southern Hospitality can inflict bleed damage onto your opponents, but to be honest, I'd rather use a weapon that can get random crits than use a weapon that will kill them over time. D tier. The Jag is all about building your sentry guns and other Engineer items as fast as humanly possible. Only problem is, there are none of that in medieval mode, so all you get are downsides. F tier. The Eureka effect has a lot of interesting upsides in the main game. Only problem is, there's no sentry guns, again, and there's no point in going back to spawn, so essentially you have upsides and downsides that don't do anything in this game mode, so it's just stock. D tier. While being great in the casual game, most of his usefulness comes from the Uber guns. With none of those in this game mode, you'd think the class wouldn't be as good. He still is a great class to pick. Not only do you get to hurt your enemies, but you're also able to heal your team as well with the weapons that they give you. The Crusader's Crossbow is Medic's best primary in normal gameplay, and it's his best weapon in this game mode as well. Having a ranged weapon at all times is great, and you also get to heal your teammates at the same time. Adding on to this, the crossbow shot does more damage and more healing the further you are away from them. So not only is it a net positive to just spam it at the points without how high the damage and healing are, but it's also a great tool to shoot someone with when they get too close and then hit them with your melee. It's great. It's almost mandatory in the main game, and even more so here. S tier. Medic is one of the few classes in the mode where stock melee is almost his best. It's not that it's any different from any other stock weapon, it's just that his melee options have upsides that affect what happens in normal game modes. Once you take out the minigun, some of the melee options just become pointless to use, so stock is one of the better options here. B tier. Being a medic's main pick in normal games, the Uber Saw doesn't get any love here. The only upside affects your Uber, and since you don't have that, you don't get to use it properly, so what you're left with is a bad weapon in this game mode. F tier. Much like the Uber Saw, the Vitasaw's upsides affect your Uber, and it has an even worse downside with less health. F tier. It is a good melee weapon for the medic that has actual upsides that affect the weapon itself and not the Uber. You gain more health with the Amputator per second, but you lose some damage, but that's not the main point of the weapon. When taunting, you can actually heal your teammates within a certain radius to keep them battling. It's the only way the medic can mass heal a bunch of people in the game like he normally would, and it's some of the best healing found in the game mode. A tier. The Solemn Vow is a bit of a unique weapon. You're able to see the health of the enemy at the cost of a slightly slower swing speed. But since the upgrade is passive, you're actually able to get good information for yourself from enemies far away. Do you see an enemy with low health? Well, you can either shoot at them or you can hit them with a melee swing for a good kill. It provides info that is insanely hard to come by even in the normal game. A tier. Sniper is a highly controversial class in the main game due to the fact his hit scan, which is able to kill anyone across the map, but in medieval mode, he only has a few good options. One of them is the best projectile weapon in the game. He's not too oppressive, but you still definitely feel his presence when you fight a good player in this mode. The Huntsman is the best projectile weapon in the game. It has the fastest speed, so it's hard to react to. It can one-shot kill any class in the game if you aim somewhere near the head, and... Okay, I really don't have a third point to make the sentence flow nicely. Can the editor cut the line? Being able to shoot someone across the map from a safe vantage point is great, and it can also catch people off guard when you're up close with them. So people running up to you might not like getting an arrow to the face. It's a fun weapon in normal game, and an insanely good weapon in this game mode. S tier. Believe it or not, you can't use the Girardi in this game mode. Yeah, it was a surprise to me too, but I guess it would be too strong since the enemy has to be close to you to do damage in a lot of situations. However, the sniper still has a ton of backpacks to choose from, the Razorback being the best option since you don't have to worry about getting backstabbed, which will happen a lot in this game mode, making this weapon insanely valuable. S tier. So the Darwin's Danger Shield gives you immunity to fire and fire damage, in a game mode where fire damage is near impossible to come by. F tier. The Cozy Camper's intended purpose is to not flinch when shot. Only problem is, you can't snipe, you can't aim down sights, and you can't get shot. F tier. We have finally found the class where the stock melee is the best option. While some of the melee options for a sniper aren't too strong, the one that is strong got inadvertently nerfed with the removal of Girardi, making the stock weapon just the best option. It has no downsides, does the most damage per second based off my 2 seconds of mental math, and is just a reliable tool. B tier. So the Travelman's ship makes your target bleed over time, and the only issue with that is that the weapon does such little damage that it doesn't even matter. If you're caught out with this weapon, it's already over. D tier. Since you don't have Girardi in this game mode, you can use the extremely reasonable and fair combo of Girardi and Bushwhacker, making the mini crit turn into a full crit, so now you walk around with a damage vulnerability. F tier. The Shana has an interesting stat where you do more damage if you're under half health, and the issue with that is, the damage isn't enough to make up for your lack of health. Since you have the lowest health pool in the game, you only get one melee swing worth of health before you die, so you're never going to get that cool montage where you just kill a bunch of people. F tier. Spy is the hardest class to play in the game, but if you're able to play him well, you can do great things against the enemies. Stripping people back to their melee weapons only, it makes it much easier for good spies to get trick stabs. However, if you're bad at the class like me, it makes it much harder for the weapons to be ranked. So the stock knife is the best stock melee in the entire mode. Being able to backstab your enemy to get an instant kill is always a great feeling. It's the best weapon to practice trick stabs on as well, since there's no downsides to work around and it's just fun to use. A tier. The Eternal Reward has a fun mechanic where whenever you backstab someone, you get to take their disguise immediately, and have the death be silent with nothing in the kill feed with the body disappearing. Yeah, it sucks you need full cloak in order to disguise, but being able to trick the enemy team right in front of them is always a joy. B tier. The Conoverse Kunai is the hardest spy knife to use. You start off with 70 health, but on backstab you can gain more health all the way up to 210. While this weapon can be the most oppressive spy knife, you need practice in order to get the results that you want. You can't just slap it on your class like it's the Scotsman's Goal Cutter. You need some time with the weapon to get anything good with it, which sadly, I don't have the ability to do. Now with my results, it would go in C tier since I'm shit at the class, but against that, I'll put it in A tier. It might be S tier, I'm just gonna put it in A tier to be safe. The Big Earner allows you to get a speed boost with every kill, not just backstabs, which is great. You're at 100 health, but that's not as much of a detriment in this game mode like it is in normal gameplay. So not only are you able to dodge around the enemy and get backstabs, but you're able to dash around the map as well, which is insanely fun. A tier. So the spy cycle is weird in this game mode. In normal TF2, spies do have to be on the lookout for pyros, and this weapon is supposed to aid them in combat when they get into a fight with one. But the issue is there's never any fire in this game mode, for the most part. There is the sharpened volcano fragment and the fire tip huntsman arrows. Hypothetically, you could be stuck without a weapon for 15 seconds, and since this weapon is stock knife with the potential of just being missing from your class, it's going in F tier. Is there anything more medieval than using technology in order to become invisible to everyone on the enemy team? Don't answer that. The Invisible Watch is a useful tool that helps you get around the enemy team, and since there are ammo packs galore in this game mode since there's no guns, you can just stay hidden for a long time. Great choice, A tier. Cloak and Dagger allows you to be invisible forever, as long as you don't move. You get to wait for the exact right time for the enemies to be lined up for backstabs before you go back into the shadows. While it's not my preferred way of playing the game, it definitely has its uses. A tier. The Dead Ringer allows you to become invisible and gain a speed boost on hit, making the enemy think they killed you. Even though 99% of the time, the enemy knows they didn't actually kill you, because everyone uses this item in this game mode. It's more of a shock to learn that you actually did kill the spy a lot of the time. and since you get a speed boost and invisibility, you get to run away and do it all over again. S tier. And there we have it. Every single item in the game mode ranked from worst to best. There's a lot of different choices on how to play the game, but at least we can all agree on one thing. Who the fuck decided to let the Scotsman Skull Cutter crit?